So Raid Finder.
So, what is Raid Finder? We've talked a lot about Raid Finder for patch 4.3, but we thought we'd give you guys a little bit more details since we're here talking specifically on dungeons and raids. Essentially, the concept came up from what we did with Dungeon Finder and being able to see how successful that's been with getting a lot more players into the dungeon content that we build. What we've found with raids, though, is that we aren't seeing as wide of an audience as we would like in our raid content. We spend a lot of time on the raid content, and it's also just got some of our coolest fights, some of our best creatures, and we really feel like everyone should have a chance to see that content. It's one of the main reasons we decided to get it in with patch 4.3 instead of waiting until Mists of Pandaria, because being able to fight Deathwing in the Dragon Soul raid, we just thought, what better place to put it in so that as many people as possible could get a chance to experience that fight and be able to finally put down Deathwing for good. Now, what we're doing with it specifically is a lower difficulty level than normal difficulty. And that doesn't mean that we're just going to go in and tune the hit points down a little bit, and we're going to go in and tune their damage down, 20 or 30%. Instead, we're actually going to go in and look at the mechanics, see how complicated they feel, talk about could a group of 25 people that haven't played together before be able to figure this out, and actually build something that works for them. If we took the shortcut route about just, literally just changing numbers, that's still not going to tune down the complexity of the fight. Yes, it might make it easier, but then you're not going to know why you beat it. You're not going to actually pick up on those mechanics. So we're actually going to go in and make sure that these fights feel right for this difficulty level. Like I mentioned, this is going to be in patch 4.3 with Dragon Soul, but in 5.0, Mists of Pandaria, it's actually going to be for every single dungeon on launch. So it's really going to be cool because starting out early on in the expansion, so many people are going to have more access to more content. You're not necessarily going to be done when you finish, heroic dungeons, and maybe you've done challenge modes, and now you feel like you're ready, but you don't necessarily have a group to raid with. Being able to use Raid Finder is a way to get in really quickly. Now, on the opposite side for Raid Finder, we've also made sure that the loot and the rewards that you get from it feel appropriate to that level of player that's doing it. So for instance, you're not going to be able to get vanity items out of the normal Raid Finder, things like mounts that would drop off the final boss. We keep those in normal or heroic. Things like achievements for specific bosses are going to end up staying in the normal and heroic. We will have an achievement that says you've done Raid Finder, but that would probably be it. And then all the rest of our achievements would end up staying in the normal and heroic modes. So that there's a lot of people that play those modes and they take a lot of pride in the fact that they can finish that content. And we think that's awesome. We want that to still exist. But we also want to be able to open that content up to more people, and that's where Raid Finder slots in. So we've got a couple mock-ups of how this would look. We've been talking a lot about how to get people more motivated to do raids. So we thought, along with Valor Points, a side of fries would be sweet.
So tasty.
So this is it's going to look very much like Dungeon Finder that you see now. You're going to be able to open it up, pick your role, and queue up for it. And one really important point about Raid Finder is that it works for 25-player raids, not for 10-player. And we did that specifically because it's going to be so much better queue times if we do 25, because we can fill it with 17 DPS versus in a 10-man where we use a much smaller number, and the queue times would just be way bigger. So 25-player raids end up working much better for Raid Finder than 10-player. And now Scott's going to hit on some of the goals we have for the expansion as a whole.
Okay. So one of the things we're really trying to do with Mists of Pandaria this time is keep the experiences short and focused. A few of the dungeons in Cataclysm actually got away from us. Hall's Origination had 7 bosses. That takes a while to get through. Dead Mines had 6 bosses. That took a long time to get through. We actually had to go back in and hotfix some of the trash out to try to keep it a bit more focused. Because again, we want you to be able to not just like make it so where at the end, for a night you're like, oh, I'll do a dungeon. These things should be short enough so you actually like want to do a couple dungeons, or a dungeon plus some dailies, a dungeon plus some pet battles, a dungeon plus some battlegrounds. Trying to keep these short and focused will give you more opportunity to do more things inside our game, and we think that's very, very important. Another one that we'll talk about together is need to make the encounters understandable so we don't set up groups to fail. We released Dungeon Journal. One of the main reasons for that was trying to make it so where you get into a group, you're going along, you like get into a boss fight, all of a sudden you're all dead, and you're like, what just happened? And then the healer gets blamed, and then afterwards you're like, oh, I guess I can look in Dungeon Journal and see what's happening there. The Dungeon Journal is great for that, but what we really need to do as designers is make sure is that visually you understand what's going on, that we telegraph these abilities so you aren't out of the blue hit by something really deadly. It's something we're really going to try to focus on, making all of the encounters super understandable. Because I just mentioned like how bad it was if you don't understand like why you all died or why you all failed. It's almost just as bad if you go into an encounter, go in, everyone goes, all right, we just got this, and you go in, you fight, and you win, you're like, well, what just happened? I don't know, but we won. Okay, that's pretty bad too, because that means you didn't actually like understand what the game mechanics were. There wasn't any enough gameplay there. We put in abilities that, hey, if there's a big damage spike for a tank, use your shield wall type ability. Things like that. If you can just ignore those kinds of things, then, and if you don't understand them, that makes for not as much fun. And that's what we're really trying to hit for, is upping the fun quotient of the dungeons. Another thing we're really like talking about is flexing our creative kung fu. This expansion is awesome for us. We've been over the last few expansions, we've had these really heavy dark themes when you think about it. Like, you've gone up to Northrend, to stop the Scourge and the Lich King. The Cataclysm just happened, and now you're killing Deathwing in 4.3. Here in Mist of Pandaria, I mean, you saw one of the dungeons earlier, you're trying to make sure the beer doesn't stop. This is amazing. It's a little bit more lighthearted, it's a little bit more friendly, and also it allows us to, like, there's all these cultures and things, we're all like super geeks, kung fu movies, Asian culture, anime, all these things that, all of a sudden it's like, we can dragon punch people and WoW? Awesome.
We can.
So you'll get dragon punched and all other kinds of like crazy moves, flying guillotines, I'm sure, all kinds of new stuff. It's really exciting us as designers to work on this. And I think you'll really see, when you guys finally get your hands on this, all that, tender loving care. And another like interesting thing, so the 3 dungeons you've seen before, something that's actually really cool about them that we're doing with these is they're actually in the world at a 1-to-1 scale. A lot of our dungeons are actually just holes in the wall, and then behind that hole, like, time and space sort of changes, and if you actually walk the same distance inside the dungeon that you walked outside, you'd go through a mountain or something. These places are all actually in the world, which opens up a ton of really cool things. Our quest designers are super excited about being able to send you into these dungeons. You can see here, like, this is the J Temple. Again, that's actually in the world. It's gorgeous. We're giving you a chance to see it. Like Corey was talking about, the indoor-outdoor dungeons really feel amazing. Again, going to that more lighthearted feel. Like, if you can see the sun, that's amazing. Some of our dungeons before have been very dark, very heavy themes, while so many of these are, just gorgeous. So now, thanks for listening. Of course, we would not be here without all of you.